Hey everybody, welcome to lunch and the very first Digerati Talks. That's exciting. So I just wanted to say a few words real quick just to set this time up and sort of the why, and maybe a little bit of a, hey, this is what's going on. But with Open Digerati, one thing I love to remind our teams, when you see, anytime you see Open Digerati, I hope that you realize that's not a team at Life Church, but that's a mindset and a movement that you're a part of. And so it's pretty exciting to see all of the internal collaboration that's happened since that open source week we had last year, to see just some of the work groups that are still meeting, even the open projects that are happening. I know YouVersion has some cool things happening, even for designers coming up and on the website as well as these projects. And so I just want to tell you, like, way to go. Let's keep this up because we're learning how to be more open with what God has given us to steward. So that's awesome. So this Digerati Talk time is just another piece of that puzzle. And honestly, it was YouVersion. I think Zach and his team, the engineers, specifically were doing some lunch and learns in the past. And we had talked about what if we did that for Digerati as a way to get together, something comfortable, but yet also something we could really hear some new tech or some new processes. And so what this Digerati Talk is, that idea where we get to share that, different Digerati members, and it's going to be at a little bit higher level so it can relate to everyone, but just talking about something that you're working on, some new tech or new process. And so that's what you're going to hear today from part of our YouVersion team. It's going to be exciting. And the whole idea is so we can connect together and we can continue to sort of dream together and collaborate together and see what God's doing within all of our teams. So take advantage. Hopefully this is a relaxed environment. It's going to happen the first Thursday of every month. So just bring your lunch, sit back. And some of you have some ideas to present, so be sure to get with Simon on that. And can I just say thanks to Simon? Simon has put this all together. He's owning this thing. Yeah. So thank you guys for leaning into all that's happening. Me and Zach were just talking. God is doing something in what we call Digerati space, but around the world. It's just awesome to hear, like with Facebook, the things that are coming up, but even the relationships that are happening in Open Digerati. Some of the conversations you're not privy to that I have almost every day. It's amazing to see how people are excited about how can we unify together and actually build things together that matter for the kingdom. And so we're a part of this. You're a part of this. And so thanks for leaning into what we own, what we get to steward, and saying, God, how can we open this up? What does it look like to be more open with our learnings, our technology, both internally together and externally with people outside? So way to go. That's what this is. So I'm going to get off the mic. I'm going to give it to Simon. He's going to introduce our time. Give it up for Simon.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, thanks for giving up your lunch. I feel like this is a really important time just to get together, like Brandon said, and just collaborate, share, be together. There's some note cards on your table. Take notes on those. Any questions that you might have, we're going to have a short Q&A session at the end. So feel free to make any notes you might have there. And I'm just going to introduce the guys because you want to hear from them, not me. Andy Knight and Ryan Ackerman have graciously volunteered to give today's talk on A/B testing. And some of you may know what it is, some of you may not. And that's kind of the point. So I'm going to just turn it over to those guys. So please welcome Andy and Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. And thank you, Brandon and Simon, for your vision and leadership and preparing this type of meeting together. So it's really cool. And especially, Simon, thank you for letting us volunteer to go first for this because, I mean...
We weren't forced.
That's so unselfish of you because, I mean, you could have, like, been standing here
You're welcome.
doing this, but instead, no, you let us do it. So thank you. Appreciate that.
No worries.
God save the Queen.
Amen.
So I should also mention before we get started that besides Ryan and I, Brian Manson was going to be part of this team with us. He was going to be up on stage sharing with us. So our thoughts and prayers just continue to go out to them, to their family, for their loss. And I've spent time with them, and their faith is like a serious force to be reckoned with. I mean, they are so deep. Their children, Grace, Colin, and Annabelle as well. So, and their family last week, they were just blown away by the love and support from the Life Church community, from their team. And so let's get started with a word of prayer, and then we'll get going. Father, we are honored to be your servants, to be known by you, that you know everything about us, you still love us. Thank you that we are part of this amazing team that you've assembled, and for each one here. And I pray that as we communicate, that we express your heart and your love for every person who uses the products that we help create. In your name we pray. Amen. So here's what we're going to do. We want to get started with, we're going to talk a little bit about A/B testing. It's not AB testing, so we won't be doing any crunches or planks up here. But it is A/B testing, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it is. We're going to talk about why we're doing it. We're going to give you 3 case studies as to examples that we've learned from. And we're going to, after that, we're going to open up to, we're going to give some takeaways, and then do some little question and answering. And that's kind of where we're going to kind of stand here and with a blank stare on our face, because we're new to this. We're really getting started learning what A/B testing is. And so some of you, in fact, show of hands, how many of you have actually done A/B testing before? Was it, how many of you did it here at Life Church? Okay, and some of you did it before. So I'm going to have you guys come up here and take my place. No, at the Q&A time, feel free to, like, if there's something that we left out or we forget, like, I want you guys to participate. So ask a question, and we'll let you guys answer their questions. So, so Ryan's going to start off talking about sort of the what. You already know who we are. The what as to why, what A/B testing is, and then I'll talk about the why.
Yeah, so a few of you know what this is, but yeah, what is A/B testing? It's a way to basically compare like one variant of something to another and kind of track the data behind that. So one example might be set something to read out one thing and then change it to say something else and kind of track and see engagement based on like that change and see like which one works better, so you can go from there.
Okay, so why are we A/B testing? And the first reason is that, honestly, it's just to improve the user experience. One thing that we've learned was that if we're not going to measure it, then we're not going to improve it. So by A/B testing, we're actually measuring what we want to improve. Another reason is because it helps us mitigate risk. With 7 million daily active users for YouVersion, any change that we roll out is going to affect a whole lot of people. And A/B testing is a way to help alleviate some of the decision-making and stress that goes into making a decision. It helps us mitigate the risk, helps us improve user experience, and also it levels the decision-making playing field. This isn't so much a factor, I think, at Life Church because of our structure and our willingness to have self-awareness and teachability, but I know in some organizations, whenever a decision has to be made, the fact is that gathering data is difficult. And so instead of taking the time to do it and make decisions based on data, it's just kind of a gut instinct decision. And with a gut instinct decision, often it's the maybe the loudest person in the room, or maybe the most vocal, maybe the leader in the room that ends up, it's his or her gut instinct that we tend to follow. So in a situation that might come up where maybe it comes from the bottom up, like from a product team, they present an idea to leadership, and leadership has some concerns about it, or maybe it's vice versa. The leadership presents some ideas to the product or development team, like we need to do this, and there's some concern on the product or engineering team. But whatever it is, you have a tool in your tool belt. You can say, let's test it. Let's test it. And then that helps level the decision-making playing field. And that's and that's why we are doing A/B testing. And so at the beginning of the year, we decided to do something a little bit different. We shuffled the deck with our product and engineering team. We mixed together, and then we split up into two different teams. We had a plans team, and we had an engineering team. And each one was divided up with product design, with engineering, and API development. So we're all mixed together. And then, so Brian and I are on the plans team. And also on the plans team was Brian Manson, and Justin, and Alex, and Tommy. So we were the plans team, so we decided right from the beginning that we want to test plans and figure out how we can improve plans. So do I have some stats here? What's next? Oh, yeah. We determined on the YouVersion team that 4 days per week, that is like, if we can get people using the Bible app daily 4 days a week, that's kind of our benchmark, our goal. And so we figured out that plans is like the most important feature that we can give people that they can use and help us hit that goal. 58% of people who subscribe to a plan use the app 4 days per week. So that's an important stat for us. So when we came into our plans feature team, we thought, how can we improve that? How can we get people to doing a plan more than 4 days a week, or at least 4 days a week? And so we came up with the idea of the plan finder. So
yeah, so let's go over what the plan finder actually was. So the first piece of the plan finder was a moment in the home feed, kind of showing that we have plans in case someone just doesn't want to look around in the app. It's just another way to surface plans to our users. And additionally, after that home feed moment, we came up with a design that showcased some interests, so people could find plans based off of different things like love or about the Bible, and kind of it just allows us to kind of point them to plans that might actually impact them and help them go through the plan and continue to use the app throughout the week. Like we said, the 4 days being our target. And then additionally, from this Show Me Plans For screen, we're presented with some suggestions. And this is some plans that have a lot of completion or a high completion rate. So we're showing them these types of plans so that they might actually go through and not only subscribe, but actually go through and complete the plan to its capacity. So with A/B testing, you're testing different variants. So we'll cover quickly the variants of the plan finder. So we have the control, which we don't have a slide for, but it basically is no change. It's the current build of the app. There's nothing in the home feed. There's no additional views or anything, just so that we can measure against, the control. So no change. And then this A variant, the home feed moment, allows the users to see that there is plans in our app from the home feed, and they tap on the moment, and it just brings them to the existing Find Plans view in the app. So this is a marginal change, but just an additional data point that we could track. And then B actually adds in the plan finder itself, so it's the view that has the different interests. And for B, we actually are only showing, we're only allowing them to select a single interest. So they select anger or love, and they're only presented with plans based off of that topic. And then we also had another idea, so we actually did an ABCD test with this one. And so the C variant was just another data point to see if we could drive engagement with this feature. We allowed people to select up to 3 interests, and that you could get a combination of different recommendations based off what you choose. So now I'm going to cover how we actually achieved this A/B test. So we used Firebase. We already were using Firebase for a couple things in the app. We were using remote config to basically change values on the fly. So Firebase currently has a beta version of A/B testing. It works pretty good. It's not a glitchy beta test, but so we went ahead and used that. And because it uses remote config, it allows us to actually change the values on the fly. And since we were already doing this, it was pretty easy to integrate into the app. And how this actually works is we would set up the values in the A/B test, and then Firebase would determine which bucket you're going to be put into, or if you're even going to be in the test at all. You can actually only roll out the A/B test to a small percentage of users, so every user isn't going to potentially see something that might not work out since it's an A/B test. And so when that happens, the app will actually fetch the new values every single time. Every single time it tries to check that value, in case we need to roll back the feature, in case there's some weird bug in the app. And then accessing those values is just like a dictionary. If you're familiar with programming logic, basically a dictionary, you can just get a value for a key. So those keys we were able to come up with on our own. Didn't really matter as much as the A/B test. And so we'll cover the technical setup of this pretty quickly. So there's two components to this. The first component being actually setting up the values in the Firebase console on the website. And then the second one being fetching the actual values that you set up in the console on the website in the app. And then once you have those fetched, you read them and update the UI based off of the value. So this is what the Firebase console actually looks like. You can see that we set up the plan finder key, and then this is the result of the actual completed plan finder experience. But this is basically what the remote config looks like. You can set up a value, which we had set to single. And if you had the single value coming back to the plan finder key, we'd actually show that view. And if we didn't, then we would basically just go to the old way, which is find plans. And then some code to show what this looks like. It's fairly simple. You would fetch from remote config, and you can set a cache duration so that it's more efficient and you're not pulling directly from Firebase every single time. If it's successful, you can below you can activate fetched, which is essentially just putting those new values into the remote config instance that you declared.
So with these three choices here, the first one, just set it up. A is we're taking people from that little moment in the home feed that you guys see every day. It takes them to the Discover feed. B, it takes them, well, the Discover feed is actually what the plans, where you find plans. It has all the feature plans and all the different carousels of plans. That's the Discover. So the single select is showing this grid of all the topics, but you can only select one before you get the suggestions. And C, we designed it so you could select up to 3, and then you get the choices. And so let's have a vote. Let's see. If you think, okay, YouVersion guys, you're going to have to abstain because I think you know the answer. So if you think the answer is A, let's see your hand. I think that one won. If you think B won, raise your hand. How many think C won? It was B. We really thought C would win. Like whenever we designed it, we thought this is the one we thought would win because users like choice. Users like to, put these topics together. But in fact, the single select won. And the results. You want to talk about the results, Ryan?
Sure. Yeah. So we thought multi-select would win. You could still select one topic, and you could get those results just like with single select. But you had more options with multiple select. And we can only, I guess, take a guess on what actually happened because we'll never really know. But we kind of came up with the conclusion that multi-select maybe was too many options for users. Maybe it was just decision fatigue. So they're trying to go through, and they just never actually went through. And so these numbers here, we're actually tracking how many plans were started. That's those numbers to the side. So yeah, it's pretty interesting how what we thought would happen was actually wrong. So this was a really good use case for an A/B test.
So B actually was like 15% above the control group. So that's still a pretty big increase for such a, for one thing that we've done. So we were pleased with that results, and so now we have that in the app, and so you probably already have used it. So. Now, the second test that we ran was on the verse of the day card on the home feed. Now, the verse of the day home card is, to us, probably the most important part of the home feed that we want people to see the most, because every day it gives them a new way to hear from God and see His Word. So, but we've learned that the people who have notifications turned on are so much more way more engaged than the people who don't. They're getting it as a text message and as a push notification. So it was really important to us to have people turn that on. And so initially what we did was we had A. That's our control group. It just says turn on notifications. But we wondered, could we tweak that copy a little bit and make it better? So then we did B. And so show of hands if you think A won. Stephen? Show of hands if you think B won. And you're right. The winner's B. And we think this had to do with just the friendly copy that's there. It's just a lot more approachable. Send me this daily is turn on notifications sounds very mechanical, very robotic. And so we were pleased with B. So here are two examples. One of them was just like kind of a whole UI piece, and another one was just a little piece of copy that we changed. So those are two different. And let's go on to the the stats, the data.
Yeah, we'll just cover the results really quick. So pretty interesting here. Again, the number of conversions here is just directly related to how many people actually turned on the setting, which just happens immediately once you hit that button. So like number of button presses. And another thing to keep in mind is both of these tests were only rolled out to 10% of English users. And we did this because we didn't want to go through and localize these different tests because they were tests. We didn't know if they were going to work out. So that's why these numbers are where they're at. So Firebase also is pretty interesting. It allows us to not actually calculate this for ourselves, but it tells us when it thinks that one of the variants actually won. So it told us that B won, and I think it was about after a week of just running and basically having 10% of English users using this A/B test. And it also estimated a 3 to 8% increase. And the reason why that's a range is because we could calculate, based off these numbers, what the actual percentage was at that point in time. But Firebase was able to kind of give us a range because it was determining the increase over a range of time, so between 3 to 8%.
So case study number 3, this one is, so what we call users who are in our app who are not signed in, we call them ghost users because we don't know much about them. So
and they're spooky.
Yeah, it's creepy. So they may see it the other way around. We're creepy. But there are lots of actions that you can take in the app that require an account. So we need to prompt them with a sign up when they try to do any of those tasks. And so the first one is our control group A, and basically we just show the full screen takeover view that allows you to see. It just takes over the whole view. And then the second option B, we thought, well, let's see if this would help. What we have here is a small modal view that just kind of appears over the screen, a little overlay, but doesn't take up the entire screen. So our thought behind that was that this wouldn't be as intrusive. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't make you forget where you are. So let's go to the results. How many of you think A won? How many think B won? All right, the winner is A. No, wait. Now it's B. When we first launched it, when we first started looking at the stats, A was winning. But now B has come from behind and it's taken the lead. But actually, it's kind of too close to call. It's a very tight race. So we're going to continue watching it, but Firebase hasn't declared a winner.
Yeah, so with the other one, it was, I think, about after a week, it determined that there was a winner, but This A/B test is still running and it hasn't declared a winner yet, and that may just be because there was a negative change at one point in time. Because after the week that the first A/B test in this group, the first of the day prompt button, after that one was declared a winner, we checked this one and it was actually like red. It was saying that there was a drop in engagement, so a drop in new accounts created, which was the conversion for this one. Is basically, yeah, people that were creating new accounts based off of an action. So if they were trying to highlight, for example, and this was presented, that's what we were tracking there. So yeah, pretty interesting that a winner hasn't been declared yet, and I guess we can consider that it kind of failed because it didn't clearly say, give us the confirmation that B was the clear winner. So maybe we can go back and kind of tweak it a little bit, see if we can actually push B over the threshold to where Firebase thinks it's the winner.
So our takeaways, Ryan, why don't you share?
Yeah. So yeah, a couple takeaways. Firebase, it's a really easy way to see if an idea is worth executing. So yeah, if you're kind of debating whether an idea is worth it or not, you can kind of test it at a small scale and see if it actually does drive engagement without trying to make that guess. It gives you kind of confirmation there. And the second one, so it allows you to test one thing at a time. If you try to run more than one A/B test or just a few of them, it's kind of hard to tell I guess if you're tracking different things, it might not clash as much as it would if you're trying to test a bunch of things that didn't really relate. But yeah, just testing one thing at a time is pretty clear. It gives you the idea that even if you're running two A/B tests, and it's kind of hard to like check and see if one thing is affecting the actual outcome of the other thing that you're trying to test. So testing one thing at a time kind of gives you the clear insight as to if one thing is working or if it's not. And a third one, it keeps teams small. So with the feature team, we were actually able to break off and create smaller teams, but we were still able to achieve quite a bit, even though the team size is pretty small. So you want to go?
All right, there are three more takeaways that I'm going to share. The number 4 is don't be surprised if the margin of victory is small. This really shocked me whenever I first started seeing the numbers. I'm like, we did all this work, and the margin of victory is so small. Is it worth it? And I think because of the things we've learned, it really is worth it. But just don't be surprised when it is small. But keep testing and retesting. Maybe we missed something. Maybe there was a nuance or something. Maybe the timing of the feature. Maybe the people you rolled it out to, the time of your seasonality of your app. Maybe that has something to do with it. So rerun the test later and keep checking and rechecking your stats on those. So keep the margin. Don't be surprised if the margin of victory is small. Takeaway number 5. A/B testing does have some limitations, and it can't tell you why with A1 or B1. It can't really tell you why. It can just give you the data. So you have to kind of dig into that data and figure out and analyze and ask questions. Why did this one win? And why did that one win? And sometimes you might have to go to usability testing to see, okay, let's put it in front of real users and let's see what they think and what they can tell you about it. And so it can't tell you why. It also, you shouldn't try to test drastic redesigns with A/B testing, like here's one site and here's a whole new site, and to see which one works best. Now, it will give you data as to which one performs better, but you won't know why. You might have some ideas as to why, but it won't really, you won't be able to pinpoint certain points to tell you exactly what made the difference. And also, it can't really tell you if you're solving the right problem or not, because maybe the problem was one thing, like maybe it's on the home page, or maybe you're testing something on the home page, but your problem was deeper into the app, maybe at the, the conversion page or something. So there's lots of reasons why, but A/B testing has limitations for sure. And number 6, A/B testing makes you smarter. Not only does it make your app better, but it makes you smarter, because even on those small margins of victory for one of those things that you don't think it made a big difference, you learn something, and you can carry that into the future, and you can actually make changes based on what you've learned through this A/B test, and you can carry that learning into the future. So anyway, in conclusion, I just want to say whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. We are building tools to lead people to become fully devoted followers of Christ. We're equipping churches, a whole generation of churches that are using these resources to carry out their mission. We're introducing people to the God of all creation, and we are making it possible for churches all over to use what we're using and to learn from us, and we're learning from them. So work heartily as unto the Lord. And just want to thank you guys for letting us present today, and I hope you've learned something. We've learned a lot from preparing and from doing this. So, but I'm open to questions. Any questions you guys have? Simon?
Hey, first of all, I just want to say thank you for you guys. Give it up for Andy and Ryan. You guys crushed it. Thank you. So actually, I have a question. It's awesome, first of all, the whole A/B testing. But it does seem like it could really slow down development. There's a lot of work gone into that. We've had to test different ideas and design different ways of doing things. So how do you balance the A/B testing with a move fast, follow momentum axiom?
Question.
I could say something about that.
Okay.
So yes, it may take a little bit more time at first to get set up. But now that we have the system, those last two A/B tests actually went pretty quickly, although they were kind of smaller focused. But it just gives us a clear insight into if the feature is actually going to be meaningful to our users. So putting the time into actually seeing if the data works out, I think is worth it, even if it does take a little bit longer than if we would just go at one of the directions and not really know the data behind it. So yeah, it's kind of,
I will add to that. A/B testing shouldn't be the only tool in your belt, for product design. It's just one tool. And if we were to use it for every single decision we made, we'd go way too slow. So the move fast, follow momentum is definitely important, and we just try to keep the tension alive that, yes, we're moving fast, but we also need to look at data and know when to look at data, when to keep going, and when your gut instinct should take over. It's a little bit trickier to explain, but we use data not to make our decisions, but just to inform our decisions. And so the data doesn't decide; we decide. It's just data's a guide. And so yeah, move fast, follow momentum, but data has a seat at the table.
There you go. That's good. All right.
great question.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? And if you do, I want to give you the mic.
Of course.
There's more of an answer. I think one of the other things that I saw from the outside is that the way we built features before is that we would iterate on them constantly internally, and then we'd translate all the strings into 50 languages, and we'd implement them on all platforms, and then we'd release. And with Plan Finder, it was a couple weeks maybe of going through a few designs. Some of the actual iterations that we would have done during beta testing or were actually the variants that got tested. And because we did like 10% to English audience only, we didn't localize anything. We did it iOS only. So just I think in one way it allows us to try out more features and then figure out what has momentum before we put like a full force effort into it the way we've done things in the past. So another observation.
Anyone else? Any more questions? Golden.
So to feed into the things that you want to A/B test, do you have like a methodology for where your ideas come from? Like what sorts of, how different should things be to try them or stuff like that?
We haven't fully developed a methodology yet. These are the first three things we've A/B tested. Well, really, a couple of years ago, we did try one A/B test, and we built our own, more advanced system, but it was a lot more cumbersome to actually test. So we're getting into, we haven't figured out, because we have, so the 3 tests we've done are all completely different things, you know. So we'd love to work on that methodology, so to figure it out. But I know you want to focus on small changes and not big sweeping changes. So
Yeah, if it's something that you can directly track, I think that helps a lot more too. So if it's a larger feature, just by nature, it might affect a lot more data points, so it's kind of less direct. But if it's something small, like just changing copy on a button that does the direct thing we're trying to track, that would be a good indication that we could A/B test it and track exactly what we're expecting.
Once you've done all the work to do the A/B test, can you run like that same, like people's reaction against a different objective? So like on the plan chooser thing, could you run that against plan completions of like, well, maybe B made more people start plans, but C made more people finish the plan because it gave them a better option?
Yeah, so we can actually do that pretty easily. On the Firebase side, we would have to be tracking the different data points beforehand. So because we just started using Firebase for A/B testing and stuff like this, I've had to add the separate analytic events to each one. So we were only tracking the plan subscriptions for this first one, but we could add that in the future to be tracking the completions in Firebase. Then in the future we could switch back and forth. So I guess just the more A/B tests we do, the more stuff we'll be tracking in Firebase, so we'll have the more opportunity to see how the A/B test is affecting different data points. So yes.
Do you have a process in place yet for how you go back and clean up once the A/B test has run its course and get rid of all that there is around testing?
Yeah. So yes. So when we actually determine that there's a winner, we'll go ahead and do all the work to localize it and to do any like final design changes or anything. Just make it a solid feature and put more thought behind it and everything before we like package it up and give it to everyone. Then like what we do to kind of tear it down, and we're still trying to work on this since we've only done a few, but we'll clean up all the code in the app that kind of checks to see like if the value has changed, because we don't need to check anymore because we're confident and we're releasing the full feature to everyone. But on the Firebase side, cleaning up those values, believe we'll still have to keep a lot of those running for a while, just so old apps will continue to have that feature in that variant that we were testing with. Because when we do determine a winner, we go ahead and roll that out to 100% that have that build. So if we only have done it for like English only, since that's what we develop in, 100% of English will have this feature. So wherever your device is set to English, they'll have the feature. But yeah, then on the Firebase side, cleaning that up, we have it running just to make sure that those apps have the new thing and not the old thing. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, because if they update their app, they'll get that new feature without having to check the value. So even if we turn it off and delete those in Firebase for old apps, they won't be seeing the new feature, but if they update, they can get those features. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyone else? Any more? Diane, you look like you have a question. Yeah.
Did you look into other platforms other than Firebase, or is it the only one you really worked with?
So yeah, we had our own proprietary implementation of A/B testing before that worked, but it was, I think we kind of quickly built that out before releasing it. And yeah, we only used it once, but I think there are some other A/B testing solutions on iOS, but Firebase, we already had that in the app, and we were using it for a couple other things. So instead of adding another library or whatever, and some more overhead to the app just for the specific Firebase, for the specific A/B testing, we just went with something that we already had. So it's kind of for free almost, but yeah.
You guys mentioned testing English-speaking iOS. What level, to what degree of levels can you separate demographics or target different demographics for testing?
So yeah, there's a few different things you can target. English or language is one of the ones that we've been using, but you can target countries too. So we actually rolled out the plan finder to 10 of our top plans countries at first, just to kind of load test the API, make sure that they're able to respond to more and more load, which is also another way to move quickly, because normally it would take us a lot of time to go through and test out all the different API endpoints in the back end and make sure that those were able to handle a lot of load. So this way we were able to slowly roll out without having to put more additional work on the API. It was really easy in Firebase to basically add more countries as we wanted to and increase the percentage. But yeah, we can test basically as many things as we want. We can just add new properties that we're tracking with people, with the users in Firebase. So yeah, it's kind of open to whatever we want to track, basically, and determine what bucket we want to put them in.
All right. Hello? Yeah. Hey.
Hello.
Hi. Let's just give it up again for Andy and Ryan. That was awesome. Thank you guys so much. Good day. Yeah, so we're going to wrap up here in just a second. We're going to send a follow-up email to everybody shortly with just a quick survey on there, like how do you like it, what can we do better in the future, and then any other topics that you'd like to hear, or if you've got an idea like you'd like to present to the group in there as well. We'd love to, we want to do this once a month. So yeah, thanks for coming and enjoy the rest of your day. Brendan, cool, thanks.